this, and I hit you right when you got the goal. We're live.
That's
It's
how
10
we do it.
a.m. somewhere, Steven.
Let's see what time is it here. It's 12, so that's West Coast time. We're West Coast time today.
Okay. All right.
Pretty
All right. We
accurate.
hit 10 a.m. West Coast.
Pretty
What's
on
up,
point.
West Coast?
Only 3 minutes after. That's a pretty good swing for us there.
That's not bad. We can hit 10 a.m. See, that's the way we should look at it, is that 10 a.m. somewhere means that as long as we hit it on the hour, it's 10 a.m. somewhere.
Yeah, between a certain range, right? We gotta be local time. You know what I mean?
I feel you.
You know, whatever that is to where we are.
Well, we're here. We're live with the
we
Dream
are
Show
we
with the
we are
people.
here. We're here with beautiful beach behind us and trees blowing. You can't see that on my angle from behind because
You know,
we're facing across the table. You know what I'm saying?
you have to have
Family's over
different. You
here.
have to have different
It's a
camera angles. Is what it
green
is.
screen is what we'll say.
This is an amazing green screen. How good these have gotten. But
They've really upped the level.
Wallows in the house.
Who's that? Wallow J. What up? What up?
So, what has been going on in your world, Sir Steven?
Ooh, what we did one last Wednesday, right?
Yeah, we did one
So
last
that
Wednesday, so
was
we're catching up.
so we did Thanksgiving. Went
Thanksgiving
down.
happened. How'd your Thanksgiving go? What
It
was
was
your
good.
What was
It
your
was good.
Thanksgiving like?
Went down and saw some family, ate,
Okay.
had some food, came back up. You know, spent one night down back home or back in Bainbridge. Uh,
What's the Thanksgiving staple mark that like means at Thanksgiving to you? Like, what's the thing? I've been thinking about that since like this was the first Thanksgiving I've ever spent that I wasn't like with the like my family, and so like I was abroad, and so like it was kind of one of those things. It was like, well, what is Thanksgiving? Like, what makes Thanksgiving like click in your head?
yeah. So, like, what would you to me specifically, or
Like to you
um,
specifically to you, like what clicks and goes, oh, it's Thanksgiving.
definitely, probably going and eating with the family and then having some caramel cake if they know how to make it. It can't. It's not really like what you think, what people think it is.
Okay.
It is caramel cake, like you think, but you don't have it like this. If it's done well, it's really hard. Apparently,
Okay.
my grandma did it, and she used to even say how hard it was. But the fact that I liked it so much, she was like, "I'm gonna make it because you still like it. You know, people like it. I would push for it, a little bit." And so now,
What was hard about it? Was it the process? Or did you ever like watch it
uh,
get done?
so apparently it's from scratch thing, or I don't know if
Right.
that's still the case or not. But the icing also you gotta get it right, and there's a certain thickness
Mm.
to it, and like texture and
Get the
sweet,
consistency right so it
yeah,
sticks right. Yeah.
cause sometimes it's like runny. It tastes okay, but it's runny, or your cake isn't as good this time. So the cake's got to also be like fluffy and like moist enough that it goes well. Because you can't have it too soggy because the icing is thick and rich, you know. And so what I'll
Dude,
do is take the layers and separate the layers and have like the cake each. I separate each. It's that good. It's
it's
like
like an all day process type, like a
it can
multi
be.
like step
It could be
process.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so to make it is apparently incredibly taxing, and so it's a dying art, I guess we'll say. My aunt Deborah, she nailed it this year. She's been trying since Grandma moved on, but she's done good historically. But I was like, this is the one right here. So I guess it
Like
takes some
just
time to like get
it's reps,
it's reps.
bro.
Yeah, that's just what you just got to do it enough
Everything's
times.
reps.
Then yep, and that don't mean the next one's going to be perfect either, right?
Yeah.
It means that this one was really really good and close as ever seen. So yeah,
Have you baked anything? Is anything like in your repertoire? Are you a baker at all?
uh, so I haven't in a long time. I guess I would say.
Okay.
Um, I don't know the last thing that I really ever did bake, but I don't. I like. I got to. I can do it. I feel confident I can do it. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Okay. You
Okay.
blue belt. Like
Yeah,
you skip
like
class here and there,
are
but
we
like
talking like
you've
so?
been
That's the
there.
thing. There's an art to it too, as well, right?
Right.
Are we talking about something that's going to be like visually appealing as much as it is,
Tastes good.
appetizing? Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I don't. That's the hard part, right? So Yeah, I don't
I
know.
see
Probably not
myself
good.
as a magnificent cook. Like I'm a good baker. Like that's the first way I learned to cook was like watched my dad cook like bake, and like my dad can bake, and then my grandfather could bake, and so like I kind of learned how to like make cakes, and like once you learn how to make cakes, you kind of understand the chemistry. I'm one of those type people too that like I don't really measure anything either when I'm baking. Like it's all
No.
just kind of like throwing it together, being like visually seeing the consistency, and then being like, oh, okay, all right. We throw in there, yeah. Wow, though I'm a seasoned purple belt. Like I venture to say I'm like a brown belt baker. I don't know.
What?
Yeah.
I ain't never seen you bake nothing ever.
What? I baked.
Never.
I baked my grandmother's biscuits last
I,
week.
I wasn't
I
there.
made biscuits, and yo, they were a winner with
Didn't see it.
everybody across the board.
Never seen
And then I make pancakes, bro. I make pancakes. I you and Wallow are in
pancakes.
here just
Okay.
doubting me. Y'all
Are
are
pancakes
doubting.
bacon? Does that count as bacon?
That's baking. You're
Baking?
mixing your different. Yeah, that's baking.
That's not baking though. That's like something else, right?
Okay, all right.
That's you know
Look,
what I mean. Like
next
technically,
PGF
this is
season,
baptism
next
feast
PGF
or whatever.
season close night,
Bake
like
off.
the end of the week when we do like how we have the wrap of the regular season and then there's the postseason. That wrap night, I'm gonna bake y'all something. Somebody make sure I got an oven in my hotel room over in the Orleans, and I'm gonna bake y'all something.
Mm-mm.
I'm gonna make y'all a cake.
He's gonna bake pancakes.
No, I'm gonna make a cake. I'm gonna make a pound cake.
Ooh, see,
It's
I
the
think
kind of pound cake that.
from what I understand, that might take skill to do well. I don't know. I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, there is skill involved. There's a bake off going down. Wallow, are you entering into this bake off? I'm down. We're baking.
We got time.
PGF bake off.
We
I
got
mean,
time. Get reps in now.
I've
Bring
heard
them
a
on.
couple conversations where people are saying that we need to bring some like reality TV into our lives at PGF, which I thought that's what we were doing all along. But I think a PGF Bake Off should happen. Like,
I mean,
bring in some of the athletes. We'll if any of them think they're a baker, like we'll have a PGF. Like I was watching on Netflix the other night that they had. Have you seen this? Like, is it cake? Like it's a whole show of
yeah.
like
See,
what
I
are we
can't do
doing?
that. That's not me. Like I can't be on that shit. No
You don't
way.
want to make like a
No,
beautiful.
I'm not that kind of level. Heck no. Some
No, yeah,
they'll be like,
okay.
it's not cake and it's not the other thing either. Probably
It might be edible. It's gonna taste good, but
is it edible? That's what the game we're gonna play.
that's our that's our spinoff show.
Yep.
Can we eat this?
It's gonna be ugly for sure, right? But then you gotta judge that. Do you still want to eat it or not? If it's gonna taste good,
I'm down for that. Like
kind of like a
I
Fear
mix
Factor
weird
baking
stuff.
show.
I have found interest like out of all the cooking shows that I've ever watched, the ones I can't remember was it. It was the one where the guy was like a samurai, and you had to like go up against different challenges that he would come up with, and the challenges would be like a mystery ingredient. It'd be like your mystery ingredient is herring. I did
Yeah,
that for the
I've
social
seen some
media
of those
clip later.
before. Okay, and there's timestamp. The Irish
I but the Iron Chef, yeah, that's it. Where they would be like mystery ingredients and stuff like that's entertaining.
Yeah, but that's people that know what they're doing though too, right? They have a shot at making something with that. You give
I
that to
mean, I
me.
think it's funny just to throw Deborah in there and be like, here's a saber tooth tiger, go.
We're cooking saber tooth tigers, or is that she got to make one out of cake, or what's happening with the
I
saber tooth
mean,
tiger?
the assignment's the assignment.
Mm, idea needs a little bit of work, but
Yeah.
I think something could be done with something like that. Probably it'd be fun because I'm sure there's people that cook that come through that bake or do other talents. You know?
So in that vein, like one of the thoughts I've had before is that like so as the sport of jujitsu is growing and like we've got all these different shows and everybody's doing different rule sets and different things like that. Would has anybody ever done this? And wouldn't it be cool if you did like a? We've already proven that like watching two of the best guys like try not to lose each other is pretty boring. But like if you took like a black belt and then like seven purple belts, and then they didn't know which purple belt they were going to get. Like one of them's Olympic wrestler, one of them is the bendy super upside down Hindu lutein guy. Like they have all the different characteristics of the different jujitsu guys, and then they just get pulled like cards where they have to like grapple the different styles and the different abilities. And it's like the same
Mm.
thing as PGF, kind of like same. I guess the PGF kind of organically does that to guys, but like where I don't go against that purple belt over there and see if you can kill him in 6 minutes, like and have that like Iron Chef esque type show. Has anybody ever done something like that? Like just even in the content world where they've made like these like kitschy videos.
I can't remember that dude's name. There was the guy, he was doing something like that, where you come through and if you visited, you go like against a white belt, a blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, or whatever, black belt at his place or whatever. And I don't know if
So
it was
like an
always.
in-house thing.
And I don't know if it was all in house or if it was that he would bring. I can't remember, but sometimes like he would be the last guy that they would go against, and sometimes I don't think he was. I think it was like a weight class kind of deal too. And so they would visit, and he'd have that, and they could win money, kind of based on whatever level you can get to of the thing. Sort of, maybe Mortal Kombat esque in the way that you just kind of climb the tiers to get to the top.
That's kind of cool.
But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting set. I don't know what happened to it, where it went, but I thought that was an interesting idea. There's lots of different things like that that are catchy, but nobody really cares outside of us.
Yeah. 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 Well, and it's
That's the
I don't
idea. Is
know.
we got to figure out how to get them to really like buy into the game that we're playing.
It's understanding the goal has been the biggest barrier, I feel like, and I think we're starting to like cross that as a sport where like the general public is starting to understand what the goal is,
Mhm.
but even we can't agree on what the goal is. It's like, when's the last time somebody was arguing about whether or not their back was flat on the mat or if it was at a 45-degree angle? And you take a normie and they're like, what? Like,
So we're still, yeah, in that way, some of the early phases of the sport being nailed down and whatever that is, But I think with when that gets, like you said, we're getting closer to where people, the average person can get it and understand the game now. I think
I think
more.
the fear of losing is what makes it so bad. I think that that's why
100%.
everybody they all argue so hard about the rules. They argue so much about the different like technicalities of stuff like that because one loss in combat sports is such a big deal that like we can't get past arguing over how to classify a first down versus making touchdowns. Like how many touchdowns have the best teams in the world gotten scored, or best teams I guess in the states, how many soccer goals or how many like how many times has somebody like been scored on, quote unquote, but they're still the greatest because they're still like playing the sport and moving forward. Losing's part of sport, right?
Yeah, for sure. And there's
Can
lots
you
of
have
people that
sport without loss?
aren't champions, and lots of professional athletes aren't on championship teams and don't win a lot. They lose a lot. They win two, but they lose two,
Yeah.
and they're still professionals. And you just deal with it, and it's part of it. And you do your best to make it a good show. Making the game, whatever it is, the best you can, and try to help your team win, I guess, and then also be a good person, good to the community where you're at, because that's a big thing too for teams and things like that.
I mean, you're describing
So
sport. We have a word for that, sportsmanship.
no, that's what it is. It's just learning
you
sportsmanship, and
you just
so
learn how to be a sport and play a sport, and like, no, I don't have to punch you through the wall because I lost to you. Like that's not the thing. Which I guess, does that water the sport? Or all right, now it's not sport. Does that water the art down in order to achieve sport? Or do they go hand in? I feel like that they go hand in hand because it's kind of teaching you the same lesson.
uh, I think there's a level of where you gotta have something like that, where there's guys that are gonna be that way. They're afraid to lose or that play it safe. And then there's gonna be the guys that live, out on the edge. And then I think the interesting part is to see who makes it through of those personalities
Like
more
in the
often,
middle.
right? Because some of the really cautious guys end up, preserving a record and having a legend and whatever, blah blah blah, history about that. And then there's a lot of guys think maybe Donald Cerrone, who never won a title, but is maybe a lot of people's favorite fighter.
That
In
journeyman
that,
type
yeah,
of, yeah.
lost equally, dramatic, and that people can't take that. They can't take those dramatic losses, But that's the thing. I said, you've heard me say this a bunch of times too. Is like it winning only feels as good as losing feels bad, realistically, to me. Like
Hmm.
the result, like whatever it is that you could do to win feels only as good to you as it does an opposition bad when it's not you. And sometimes you got to be the other guy, and that's not fun. It's really,
Yeah.
really not,
Yeah.
because it's a very individual sport that we do. It's really one on one a lot more than there's a team quote always thing behind it. And so I think maybe if we can get this team thing really decided somehow, not that it's not decided, but just to where the athletes are like on a team the way that like a professional sports team is together, and they're like, it's some like, you're the quarterback or whatever. Like we saw this weekend with the Jacksonville guy. He slid late or not, whatever, but then the other guy hit him and he got stiffened. Uh, his teammate came. They came in. They rushed that dude and were trying to like
Is
kick
that
his
what
ass.
happened? That's how unplugged I am from the world. But I saw
Yeah,
something happen in Jacksonville and like a field got rushed or whatever. But like that's what
yeah.
happened.
And so they all well, there's a bunch of different little other kind of fights that happen, I guess, in college football too. So, but for that kind of thing, that's what I'm saying is like, a lot of times people would just be like, oh, well, in jujitsu is like your boy got messed up, and you're like, well, that's on him, or whatever. And not that somebody's got to run out there and start a fight about it or whatever because there was no foul, but just like nobody really wants to go out there necessarily and get it back for the team. There's nobody like
In the team dynamic as far as how the PGF is structured. Because I mean, like
right.
as far as like teammates sticking up for teammates, like you see that in the jujitsu world where guys are like,
It's separated though, and still
it's still
it's
separate.
not direct. Like that's the thing is like when
Okay.
like the story with Gio when he got Rita after
Mm-hmm.
Boogie had the match with him. You know what I mean? It's like nobody remembers that Boogie had matches before that match that he lost to that he won right literally in a row. People only remember that he lost to Rita and then that Gio got him back. Why? Because that's such a cool story.
Right.
That's brothers literally, but even if it was just teammates and stuff like that, that makes it a cool like thing in the way. And I don't want people out here brawling and doing crazy stuff like that, but that's what I mean is like it's not necessarily teams yet, even though they're all together. We've seen it a little bit more, and I think some of the guys have really pushed to be that way, and I don't know. I think New Hope did a good job of it during the season this season. But then they all go back home. They're
Yeah.
not like a team again after that. So
Yeah.
then,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's the carryover? You know what I'm saying? So like I
And
don't know.
even then, they're in the team that they're in the room in more so than like
Yeah,
what
with
we're
the
talking
homies.
about.
Yep,
Like
exactly.
it's not like a professional team yet. But I think that it is starting to form because you'll just have to have long-standing teams for this to be an aspect. But it's starting to form the way that like race teams are, or the way that like like NASCAR or Formula One or like even like motocross and those kinds of things. Like it's forming in that way to where like you train at your track that's like near your house or whatever, but you're on a team with guys that are from around the world and y'all like can strategize and like try to play the game together on like the game y'all are trying to win. But like as far as the team aspect, you're talking about like a football team or like a baseball team. Well, then now you're talking about it changing to where like the structure of how we are as a sport becomes, which I could see that too. Like where like say New Hope builds like their training facility and they like have all their people in there and they're sitting
Or
there
they
and
just have what if they just hire Pedro and Ricky
you
and
could do
just
that
say
too.
this is the head coach of the New Hope, and they just use their already facilities that they have and stuff.
But
And
like I
then
said, that still changes to where like it's now New Hope as a
right.
facility
No,
somewhere. Right.
I don't think that kind of idea is
I don't
bad.
think it's a bad idea at all.
I think that's one thing that would make it again where people would start figuring out that because like all these guys in like the NBA and stuff, they don't live in the cities always that they're in. Like some of the stars end up, kind of getting there and staying there, but they move around and they come to where they got to be
In
at the
season, out
the
of
training
season.
training
Yeah.
camps and different
Yeah.
things like that. And so
Yeah.
yeah, if you're going to be in the 185 PGF season for Isaac's audio company that's making billions of dollars or whatever now, then
Yeah.
you got to be down here at this green screen, at a certain date to check in. And if they don't make it, then that's kind of where the issues of the sport comes in. Again, where these guys are going to be getting paid and taken care of more around the clock and not necessarily like taking care of around the clock, but just like guaranteed money for years and not just prize money and stuff like that.
That's when the sport gets away from the fact that we're living like because right now it's prize fighting. It's still prize fighting all the way up to the top level, like UFC, Jake Paul, boxing, it's prize fighting. It's how much money can you negotiate?
It's combat sports.
Pay me to show up and I could possibly win. We're gambling. And until we're not doing that, and it's like you said, where it's like, okay, I show up for training camp and I have 3 months that I'm in training camp, and that's all I do for those 3 months. I'm under contract. I am not allowed to even go like surfing if I want to because I'm under contract. And if I'm under contract, that means that I'm being paid a living wage. And that's across the board. When we start paying fighters living wages and not paying them winnings, that's when the sport will change. For now, it's just winnings, and
there's
everybody's
no
just
that way.
Yeah.
Like even though we have seasons in the PGF, the athletes don't have seasons outside of that.
Which we're the closest. You could treat the PGF that way. We're the closest.
No, I think this is a way to do that, right? Because I don't know that you'd want to stretch it out for 16 or 17 weeks like that of everybody showing up for 1 or 2 matches every week like that. I think running the weight classes and condensing it down somehow. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe that makes it a better, shorter show every time, and then that's a way to kind of do it. But then that forces everybody half a year to be somewhere. And if we have the money, I guess, for that, where we're it's on the back end, then fine. That is what it is. But I think this way, hey, this 155 season's coming up. We've already mapped it out to where we know that what seasons are, what time of the year for this year, next year, how they're going to run.
Where you can take off season to have surgeries, get recovery, do all
or the heavier weights and the lighter weights. That way you'll know, that there'll be opportunities at this part of the year or that part of the year, or the females will be split into these times of the year.
The regionals can be this time of the year.
Exactly.
And yeah. To where everybody's paying attention at different times, and then that, I mean, it's just the next
tier. And you'll need guys on your practice team, right? You'll need a guy to come in that can mimic Elijah or whatever that you can have on your practice squad or whatever. And maybe one day one of those guys breaks through and it's like, man, this dude's been on the practice squad forever, and now he's on the team. And why, stuff like that. That's sports. That's the idea of where we're going.
To which, I mean, we're talking practice squads. I know friends of mine that when like we left Kentucky and whatnot, they went and played like in either went to the Canadian League or went practice squad. The ones that went to the Canadian League, they got to play, and some of them eventually made it to the NFL, and like they wiggled their way and made that work. The ones that went and played practice squad, dude, those guys loved it. Like
you got to play it for fun. Right?
You played, and you got paid. I think that it was whatever league minimum was at the time. I think it was like 350,000 or 250,000. Either way, it was a decent job. like to go play dress up 4 days a week. Now you're a tackling dummy,
You
But
have to take a
like
beating for it to a degree, for sure. Yeah, no
you
doubt.
do, but even
Not as
so, I'm
much.
yeah, I don't think it's as bad. And I think these days, especially that sport, they've started like steering more towards the direction of like not as heavy on the hitting and the stuff in practice. It's not getting tougher. Like if you've already made it to the pros and you're able to compete and make it through a tryout, because there's still a tryout for the practice team. Like you still have to
Mm,
make it through that.
mm,
You have to be invited to do that. And so like if you're good enough to do that, well, then you've already gone through all the years that of the beating yourself up. So, like, honestly, career wise, if you're not one of the top like 1%, like that are gonna be on the field making the big money, doing all that stuff, I don't feel like it's a bad move. But this is also older me looking back at younger me that's like, oh, I want to play, and you're like, oh wait, that's what they were saying. Was it like maybe pay attention to where you're gonna have fun and where you could make a potential thing before you break everything apart trying to become that.
mm.
It's weird how that happens. So,
I'm
dude,
excited. I don't know that there's a lot of possibilities of things that could and would should happen, maybe or
yeah,
whatever. And I think it's just a matter of getting everybody on the same page, or enough people on the same. Not everybody. There's always going to be an oppositional, style or company or whatever, and that's not bad. Competition's a good way to get progress and to make sure you're putting out a good product. If you feel like you got to compete with somebody, so man, I've talked about a lot of stuff in private with people, and not like this is like a meeting with people that are like making moves or whatever necessarily, but just like some of the possibilities that can happen with some of this stuff is really crazy and interesting. Much like what we just said here, to where there could be teams and structure to where there is a league, and you know this turns into where people, this is a team and you are on this team perpetually, or at least this is a perpetual team, and they have to constantly field their own athletes, and that's another good way to make sure that they're being compensated, fairly, and different things like that is through, things like that, like NFL, which, since we're talking about that, like those contracts are where they're negotiated, and then the owner pays, and so if you can come to New York and grapple for their team, and they got $1 billion, or you want to be in Cleveland and they, only got 500 million though, but you want to be there, then that's up to you. You get to choose, where to be, how to be, or whatever.
whether or
And
not
then
you stand the chance on the team, because then that's where the winnings can still come back in, where you get a bigger pot that's on the other side. That it's like I stand a better chance to win the big tournament if I'm in Cleveland versus New
correct,
York, but New York is
correct.
nicer and they got more money. But I feel like the better
I'll
training's over
live
here in
more
Cleveland.
comfortable. I have a, right,
Yeah,
exactly. Like
yeah, yeah,
they don't, we don't have a cohesive team because we keep buying
yeah,
everybody that's not
yeah,
really here
yeah,
for us. And,
yeah, yeah. They're only here for
it,
money, and I mean, it's the same thing that happens in every
everything
top
on
level
every
sport.
sport.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
sports.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
sports, and
yeah.
that's the thing, is that we don't have that with grappling, again, because it's super individualized. In that it turns out that way.
Well, because it was all on you for the longest. I mean, it still is. Is that as the
It turns
athlete?
out ultimately to be the solo champion at the end of the season, right? So
Well,
the,
and
the
just as an athlete in the jujitsu space and in the combat sports space, is that like it's you. Like the only thing that gets you there is you. There is no team. There is no like, yeah, there's some of these like American top teams and stuff like that you could go into, and like there's more access, but it's still just getting yourself within the hemispheres of the people that'll get you to the next like thing that you're trying to do. So like it's the same game versus it being like making a financial choice based on like performance and like where I'm trying to like perform the best. Who could I perform the best under and all that type of stuff. There's reasons that these quarterbacks choose the Lions over, and I'm gonna botch it, but like the Lions over the Buccaneers or something like that. Those are two football teams, right?
yes, I'm pretty sure still. And so, like, yeah, I don't know as much about. I'm learning. I'm getting back into the sport where we talked about that. I went through about a 12, 13 year blackout when I was fighting, where I
Yeah.
didn't do sports anymore, but for what I was doing. So there's a lot of things that, it's funny. It's like was that Encino Man or whatever? You come back, it's like, what the hell? These rules are weird, but it's
It's not even the same game.
some of them aren't. Some of them are more fun that way. I think like one of the things Brandon really talks about a lot that is true that I've noticed since I've really been getting back into it is the push is always towards offense and towards
Yeah,
scoring and towards excitement and things like
excitement,
that.
entertainment.
And as much maybe more now too as safety in a way too. Like athlete
Yeah,
safety is a lot more important than it used to be. I don't know if that's like a paramount issue to everybody, but they're definitely when they're talking about safety, it's keeping offensive people safe that are doing things that leave them exposed. Where used to that's when you could blast a guy or whatever and prevent them from doing their good play by just being a hard nosed dude, you know. So I think some of that's they're making it a more elegant kind of thing than a rough thing
yeah,
in that way. Uh, so I think with that mindset, this is heading in the professional sports direction, like we keep saying. And this isn't even what we talk about at all. There was no thought to this conversation today or whatever. It's just kind of funny.
right.
Um, I think it's really interesting. I think the future is wide open for this stuff, especially now. We did talk about the UFC coming into the space, like more officially.
They're trying to come in with their jujitsu shows, and they're doing
Yeah,
there's the announcement of their whatchamacallit, the reality show that's going to be based like around from everything I've understood, everything I've seen and heard people talk about is that it's basically just going to be the Ultimate Fighter for jiu-jitsu. Like, which cool. Like that was a great show. It's in what 37th season. Like it's
mhm.
definitely done well, and it's definitely in that like lane of reality and like the reality show. I'm interested to see how it goes. I watched the early seasons of the Ultimate Fighter, but I will admit that I was one of the ones that like kind of got away from watching it towards the end because it got too much of the reality show stuff going on and not as much fighting.
No,
So
you
I don't know.
definitely.
What is your thoughts?
It's good that they're involved, right? It's hard to say otherwise about the UFC being more involved in
Yeah, it's
your
huge.
sport for combat sports, whatever it is more of. They and TKO Group more especially, like they also
Yeah.
own and operate the WWE now. It's the same. So like this is professional grappling. What we're doing as a whole is professional wrestling or whatever you want to call it, jiu-jitsu professional. It's a
I've said it
professional
before. We recreated professional wrestling, but it's shoot
the
wrestling. Like we're
the old way. Yeah, we're going
yeah,
back to the
yeah,
carnival
yeah,
essentially
yeah.
before there was you knew that it was
We're actually
you
fighting
know
each other, but we're hamming it up too.
right,
Like,
yeah, like the guys showing up like to actually beat you,
yeah. I'm
like the
actually
hometown
gonna
guy.
try to do that crazy footlock
Yeah,
that I've been practicing,
mhm.
and I'm
Hey,
gonna tell you all about it.
yep, he's gonna wrap his legs around you upside down and try to break your foot, and
Right.
and it may be weird and slow for a while, but we're gonna try to push and make it more exciting. That's the difference. Is we're not
Yeah.
gonna let it go for 2.5 hours where these guys are down on the mat without any finality to it. So I think
Well, they
that's gonna
figured
be
that out back then. That's this. I mean, that's
that's why they went to the
it got
theatrics. Yeah.
boring. Yeah. It's like, man, do something. Like,
Hey, look, you guys are really, really tough and great wrestlers and would really destroy everybody in the world, but nobody wants to see that shit.
right. I mean, how many of them? How
Tell me
many
who
of these
won though. I
matches have
want to
you
know who
seen?
won though. Like
Yeah.
I want to know.
Yeah.
For
Y'all keep
sure I want to
going.
know. Yeah.
Keep
I'll
going.
read the
Do it.
paper about it. Yeah, yeah. Y'all handle that. No time limit stuff. That's cool. And like as a grappler myself, those were some of my favorite like settings as a younger
Yeah.
grappler. Like I love doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But nobody else likes watching it.
No,
It's not
because of
entertaining.
the 500th time you like slide your arm through and push their hand away. It's like I understand how hard that is to keep up and keep doing, but it is not fun to watch.
It's yeah, and so it's just a different thing then, And so I think we saw people do that in a good way, the best they could. Shugyo, I think, when they tried to cut down those matches and just show like the highlights of it after the fact, when there's no
Yeah.
but it just didn't quite. those kind of things just don't quite have the feel, in the way. So that's one of the things with the Ultimate Fighter that, or the Ultimate Grappler or whatever they're going to call it,
Whatever they're gonna call it.
uh,
Yeah.
that I don't
Trademark that
know.
name real quick.
I don't know that they. I don't know you can capture that same thing like that.
The Ultimate Fighter was a timing thing. It came in at the perfect time during the reality era, during the fight. Like everybody was first learning about the fight, and then of course you got to give it to
So just having those one match at a time at a night or whatever for a couple of dudes
yeah,
is not going to be interesting for people to follow along for weeks at a time like that.
yeah, yeah. You think it's going to need to be stacked up more and more like a bingeable type thing?
I mean, yeah, nobody has an attention span anymore, really.
Mm,
You guys, it's got to be exciting. It's got to be short. It's got to be, if you want everybody who's not a jujitsu fan, if you like, you want all of us, yeah, run
we're
it.
just put the
Give
names
me,
in there and we'll
give me
watch.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah, give me something I'm
yeah,
familiar with. Give me one of the rule sets that I like, and I'll watch it for the
yeah,
most part.
yeah,
Especially if
yeah.
it's guys that I like. Somebody that I'm familiar with or whatever in the jujitsu space. But outside of that, it's really hard, and you don't have the random mom and pop place like trying to chime into the jujitsu scene. The grappling scene is not there yet. I think American wrestling is helping all of this as more kids and girls, and specifically too, even are getting into wrestling. More families are being introduced to grappling in a way in America, and
Mm.
we're not wearing the gi as much in lots of places, so people
Lower
are more.
barrier to entry type
It
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just more familiarity, I think, too, with that. This is the same kind of thing as
yeah.
that, but without the gi, maybe you feel a little more easier to just cross over. The it does lower maybe the tactical barrier for sure a lot to entry.
Tactical
For
or even financial barrier. I mean,
Well, financial, but I'm just saying for like high level athletes,
oh, just the
like to
athletes
cross
in
over,
general
like
that are
wrestlers, or
already
just
doing athletes.
like
Yeah.
a kid who wrestled their whole life or whatever,
Okay. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
go and just like
I
put
was
them in
gonna say
the gi.
the
It's like,
cheapest key I can think of is like $60.
yeah, but and even then though, still, but like that's what I'm saying for sure. If you want to do it like that, but I'm just saying like if you bring them into that, there's a bigger gap in the learning, and
Yeah.
there's not any
Yeah.
money in that. But now there's money in grappling, and if you were a wrestler or something like that, you can only have the Olympics kinda,
Cross.
and there's
Yeah.
not much
Yeah.
money in that. So then now you can maybe get paid to use the skill set that you built over a lifetime. And a lot of these, well, that's changed, so I won't say that. But up until now, a lot of the jujitsu athletes haven't competed on the level of a lot of wrestling
Yeah.
people. They haven't had the mat time and the matches, so that's a reason that you'll still see a wrestler come in and hang with higher
High
level
level.
jujitsu players because they have so much
They just
mat
understand
awareness.
how to get their mat there,
Yeah,
and like
what
I
not to
think
do.
you might have been a part of this conversation, but we were having this talking about the like this exact thing with the wrestlers, how people like Cam come into the PGF, and you hear guys, jujitsu guys, all the time that like train in like a hard room. They're like, oh yeah, 3 matches a night, like that's no big deal. I train in what, just name whatever hard gym you want to. And they're like, oh, this won't be a big deal. And you have somebody go through it that has done like like the collegiate wrestling. They've been through a 2-day tournament, a 3-day tournament, those type of things that are grueling.
Heavy.
Unless you're a jiu-jitsu guy that's been to the ADCC or been to something that level, you've never been through just back to back to back to back to back type of competing. And
Well, yeah, they're wrestling. A lot of those kids that got to that level wrestled a lot, almost their whole life, probably every weekend or several weekends out of the month,
yeah,
or several months out of the year. They were focused on that, probably, and other sports. I bet where they were competing more routinely. And the knock on the thing, and not a knock, but just like the joke that people say about jujitsu nerds. It's definitely a thing, man. Like I've noticed that here at the school is like we don't draw in initially yet the athlete kids first. We get a lot of the kids that the parents want help with bringing up their athleticism or confidence level or some of that instinct that they don't quite have yet. They're needing a little bit of boost in some way more that we get in jiu-jitsu than where the wrestling clubs are being selected for athletes a lot more because an athlete was the parent of these kids, or something like that, a lot more, or different things. um Jiu-jitsu is still being, it's a martial art, so we look at it a lot differently than wrestling, I feel like, in that way too, from a
I
personal
mean, to this,
development mindset. Not that it's one's better than the other, not that wrestling doesn't develop you personally, but I think it's just a different approach to that end.
when was your last interaction with a wrestler that had like no exposure to jujitsu? Like you were watching them have their first exposure to jujitsu and right in front of you. Like I'm sure sometime recently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny to watch it as they just like everything they've ever believed just melts for a little while because and then it if they stick around and they come back, well then there's the opportunity for them to see that yeah, everything you learned can be true, and then you can learn this other thing, and now you're almost invincible, dog. Like,
It's interesting, and I think a lot of it is what you're is conditioning in a way too, though, to some of these people that come in, they've already learned a lot. And what type of wrestler were you? We all think abstract wrestler. We're like, oh, this guy's going to be
yeah,
heavy-handed, blast doubling, whatever kind of thing like that. But I have a guy that trains with me, Ryan. That this guy's blue belt, and he's not that kind of wrestler. He's small. He's never really been super physically aggressive, but he's really technical about what he's doing and not doing mostly. And so he would be like, yeah, our best way to score would be to let you basically kind of start to get the back or get that point, start and then just to escape and counter because it'd never be able to just like physically manhandle people and take the positions, early. So he's more of a counter based kind of guy. And so he sort of fit into the jiu-jitsu stuff a little bit easier in that way, that he was just ready to go ahead and play the game. But also some of the hand fights or stand-up stuff that we will do for jiu-jitsu, grappling, whatever, stand up, he's like, I would never really let this go this far. I would just clear and restart. I was like, yeah, of course you should and would do that. Like, but these guys aren't, and they're not going against people that are yet,
and they're
mostly.
not gonna reset.
And
Yeah,
so, like, if you can't get this deep though, right? Like you would destroy people, right? Like, oh yeah, it's like, so then aim aim for it still. Like it's there because they're worried about other stuff than you are when you're only worried about letting somebody get behind you or
just the one
get a
thing.
takedown kind of thing. It's like you can't put your head in the same spot here. So I'm not so worried about this versus that now. You know, a lot of the same stuff applies. You just got to learn how to apply it to this game. You know, uh,
Right.
much like people keep saying, just let kids play a lot of games with sports or whatever to be well-rounded athletes or whatever. Running, jumping, throwing, catching things on the run, moving in space, finding out where things are upside down sometimes, or in weird spatial planes. The more you can do that, the better you're going to be at anything else that you're doing. And the sooner the better.
That
Also,
is what people call athleticism. Like that is athleticism, right?
yeah, the ability to recruit like the muscle and stuff that
Yeah.
required it needs to do a specific task or something. I have to look it
Movement.
up.
Like
Yeah,
yeah, something like
I
well
gotta
look
look
up
it
I
up.
mean I wasn't looking for the Webster definition, I guess but it's like okay, this morning I've been waiting to drop this little like
Oh,
bomb
I don't know what
all
this
morning.
is. I do
It's
not
just
condone this. I don't disclaim this or whatever
you
people
know the
say.
little like Musashi moments, like when somebody says something and you're like, man, that was so simple, but it made so much sense. So this morning I went for my like third official like surf session. Like went with real surfers, real surfboards. Like they text me and were like, hey, this is the good time. Let's go. It wasn't just like it's a Thursday. We said we were gonna go. We're gonna go. Whatever it is, it is. It's like, no, it's supposed to be pretty good. Let's go. So like having my very like first like true like not in a group like somebody's like specifically talking to me You want to know what like my first assignment was when I got out there? Learn how to sit on the board. Have you ever sat on a surfboard just out in the middle of the ocean?
Not in the middle.
Way harder than it looks.
Yeah, like we tried to do it at the camp that year, and it was much, especially like you said, with everybody trying to do it at the same time,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
was really hard in that shallow. So
yeah. So we got out like first off, we got out and like that requires you like timing it when the sets are coming through and you go through the little like riptide and you like paddle out and you get past the back of the waves. You get out there, little tidbit that apparently saved me like 3 months of frustration is when you go to get up, most everybody like grabs the board and like grabs it like this because you're trying to balance yourself so that you can push yourself up and sit on the board. Well, when you grab the board like that, you're now forcing your weight onto the board and you're forcing it to take it. And so when you do that, you're now gripping it. And so that'll make you start to like teeter and do all that. Dude, I swear I probably looked like I was drowning 6 or 7 times when I first got out there, where I was just like trying to get up and sit up on the board and I would just like flip over, my feet be kicking up in the air. Like, great spectacle. My man swims up to me and goes, "Hey," he's like, "take your hands and just like place them like this on the board." And he's like, "When you go to sit up, just press." He said, and here's the thing that I've been waiting to drop all morning. I've been like teaming with it. He said, if you want the board to carry your weight, you have to give it to it. And I was like, oh, he's like, you're trying to force your weight onto it. You have to give your weight to it. And I was like, huh. Meanwhile, we got back out there and I'm like swimming around trying to like learn how to read the waves and like learn how to get into the wave. And like the first one that we were trying to get, he was like, "This might be a good one. Go ahead, start paddling." And then he goes, "Abort, abort." And I was like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "Duck under." And I like tried to duck under. And when I tried to duck under, it just flips me backwards.
yeah.
And I'm just getting washed around. I pop out the back of it and I look up and then there's another wave coming. I'm like, "Oh God." So that was my first one. I ended up like coasting in, almost standing up, kind of like in a squatted position on like 2 waves this morning. Not gonna, you don't have to call me Kelly Slater, but
No
we're
biggie.
just. And I was on a short board, and it was one of a tougher day, so I felt like it was a success. Either way, that whole thing to say is that like it's transferable. That I've heard that said in jujitsu is that like when you're trying to force things and when you're trying to like put things on there, like it doesn't usually work. Like if you try to push and you try to push things in, and it's kind of like allowing things to develop was the lesson that I took away from that. And I don't even know what spurred me into that. I was just glad to share it, and I've been teaming to share that story.
No, that's it's like a good insight though too. To even a lot of stuff otherwise, but like what you were doing and what most people are doing, like you said, by holding on to the outside of the board, is what you feel like is going to give you the most stabilization and the best grip or whatever. But in reality, having like a flat hand on the flat surface is much more balanced and maybe hard to do at first, but if you can get it, it's a better kind of deal a lot of times. That happens in jiu-jitsu too, for sure.
Yeah, it's like
Holding on to
passing
stuff.
guard. Like you don't want to be like trying to and like pull through to something. You want to find it, place it on there, and give your weight to it, and then
Just
like
trying to touch it,
navigate that. Yeah.
feel it a little bit. Yeah.
Either
Um,
way.
so there's an interesting thing too that you know, I've been studying a lot of baseball stuff for Thomas,
Yeah.
and different things like that, trying to help with that, and it's fun, now learning how to play baseball. Whereas a kid, again, just relied on, must have been pretty good athlete on the bare minimum to get anywhere good because I didn't know anything technical, which is funny now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, I
Right.
know how to play baseball or whatever and stuff. So it's just like you didn't know the technical better ways to do it, or and most people, kids wise, you just let them do what they do if they do it good enough,
Right.
right? And you just kind of tighten up what they do. But there's an interesting thing to where I saw this video where they're talking about like the relationship between the upper body, the shoulders, and stuff, and your hips. And so if you're square, right, and if you just pull back, your hips just kind of stay square right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that creates a kind of tension that could allow that unwinding kind of motion to throw, right? You get some kind of tension into that kind of stuff too. But and it really just kind of relates to a few things, but in a way though, like but when they showed them, they're like people talk about getting their feet set and a way, like which way do you want it, like the best way to kind of get your feet set and stuff like that. And they were saying that like the motion just kind of comes if you do the setup and
If you
pull
just give
part.
into the
If you come through the motion correctly, and there's so many parallels to this in fighting, baseball stuff with striking stuff, especially even that. So that they did it on a trampoline, and they show you jump, and when you pull your elbow back, it would turn your hips for you, and you'd be in the right plane.
Okay.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
the natural like spot of where you would land with your feet, kind of, or
Right.
whatever it was. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And so then I went to like a little coaching clinic for that the Braves sit some coaches down to do down here in Perry. I got asked to volunteer if I would help do it as a coach, and I was like, heck yeah, of course, man. I'd love to
Right.
one get see how y'all teach people's kids, because you taught stuff and you've taught kids now too. It's not just going out there and telling them what to do exactly.
Right.
There's the drills and the way you explain the progressions and things like that. I was like, okay, now a lot more of the stuff makes sense when I could see it too. But like you would have these specific drills set up where the kids would feel the ball, and then you would want them to take a certain like step pattern kind of when they would pull the arm back in order to maximize the efficiency, blah blah
Yeah.
blah, all this, make it faster, do. And the way that you could do it, he's like you'd get them, and they get the ball, he'd get them to like pull back the elbow, and he'd literally just grab like the collar ties on behind your arms
Mm-hmm.
though or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and drag them forward and take their feet off the ground, and they would land in the position with their feet every time, pretty
Because they
much,
go to
because
yeah.
they
Yeah.
exploded from the ground with the
Yeah.
pullback to land and use that force to transfer, which is so many of the things that we do. And so
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying is like athleticism, whatever you want to call it, learning to transfer weight through the ground appropriately to apply, force through stuff, and whatever the objective is can change a lot, but the motion is the motion a lot of times.
Right.
And certain planes are better for other things, right? That's why certain people, body types and stuff like that, are better at certain stuff for sure. But
Yeah.
essentially, it's rotation or it's straight lines of different sorts and things like that. And being able to apply force through those different planes is what's going to make you better athletically in whatever you're trying to do. You know, picking up something off the floor, or you know, pulling your arm out of a 2-on-1 that somebody's got while they're on their butt.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Like the guy that I went surfing with this morning, he's a physical therapist, I believe, by trade. But like he's really into he did ultra running, and so like he did that like for a long time, and he's like got into the like barefoot running, and he's got like so we talked a bunch of times about like the different like ergonomical movements and like the body movements and stuff like that for like because like jujitsu especially. And that's where that's where I think that you run it across a lot of your jiu-jitsu guys. One, because they're on the West Coast, they're surfers and whatnot, but where that like kind of ties in, where like you can move in a way that your body can respond to the next thing. Because
Mm,
sometimes like if you're moving to that point of like I want to finish that double leg or I want to do like whatever it is, well that if you create a hard stop, well then you can't continue down the chain, and that's where something gets broken or something gets messed
mm,
up, as opposed to being able to like that fluid. Like, have you ever watched like two cats fight? It's like two like continuous balls that just move type of thing. Yeah, I'm getting into watching like animals fight on Instagram again. My algorithm is throwing up. What up, Chris? South Dakota Chris in the house.
Chris, I'm sorry we didn't text you directly.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna start texting you every time I'm going live on the
Congratulations on your
interwebs.
brown belt.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
brown belt out here. I think that his little advertisement that his buddies did for their like brown belt thing, the Christmas poo from South Park, it's like one of my favorite posters that's ever been made in jiu-jitsu.
I don't think I saw that.
You never saw South Park like Christmas poo with
So
Mr. Hanky?
what you're talking about? Like,
Uh, they were just using that as like having a bunch of brown belts teaching a seminar, and it was like Mr. Hanky's coming to town. Yeah, man, that joke missed.
I just didn't see the post, unfortunately. I guess. Where did I look at on this, Chris Presler? Oh, there it is. Oh, that's pretty good. Okay, y'all
Nice.
stupid. Y'all are stupid.
We just got man. We've now become popular enough on Twitch that we are getting shout outs from bots.
Oh, a beneficial arrangement about our channel if interested.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, if it's beneficial, you know what I'm saying?
Our DMs are open.
I don't know how to check them on Twitch.
You don't know how to check them?
I gotta log in on there. I wonder, like, I forgot about that. We talked about it last week with the other person.
We have like 500,000 followers on Twitch, and we had no. Yeah.
Are you happy person? Like, I wonder if like that was a thing.
I don't know. Is the "Are you happy" person happy? Are you happy? We should. That was a perfect opportunity to turn that around.
Is this AI, Michaela Young, whatever your name is?
Possibly.
I don't know. Either way, it's weird out here. But movement is important, and like the patterns that you go through in, like you said, the things that you can learn with your jiu-jitsu about, like the commonality of surfing, like going with the motion. I think it's where you were with some of that stuff.
That's that be water, my friend, right?
I mean, I guess that relates directly to surfing, right? Because you are like on top of it, trying to go with it, not against it, because that's the crash.
Yeah, and it's like it's one of those weird things that we're not even a white belt yet. Like I've been to a couple of trial classes. All right, I'm not trying to get ahead of myself, but what I felt.
No, I'm not even a white belt.
What I felt was this thing where like, as you're trying to get on the wave, like you want the wave, the energy to like transfer itself into the board. Well, if you're doing too much, well, then you're going to go too fast. But if you're not doing enough, you're not going fast enough. And so you're trying to get that like inertia to like transfer to you. And again, we're back around to the like, if you want it to carry you, you have to give it to it. And you're like, and it's like, all right, well, in jiu-jitsu or in anything else like that, like you're talking about, okay, well, if I'm trying to pass somebody's guard, well, if I'm trying to do too much, I'm going to get swept. If I'm going to do too little, well, then they're going to wrestle up, and now I'm having to deal with all their problems and all those things. You have to give it that perfect, it's that balance, that like I said, be water. Like all the different, that's what I mean, is it like sitting there in the middle of the ocean, like splashing around, trying to sit on the board. I'm sitting there going, that's the most Masashi thing I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, Chris. Chris trying to wakeboard was probably one of my favorite times. He's strong. I could feel when you're learning how to wakeboard, like it's more about like the sit back and letting the boat do the work.
That's when you're on the knees behind the boat.
No, on your feet, but like you get up and you're on one board, and so you're like, behind the boat, being able to jump over the wake. And so
no, thank you.
When you gotta pop up, you gotta let the boat do all the work for you to get you upright. Well, some guys are so strong that they'll literally squat the boat. Chris is one of those dudes. Like
that's what I'm talking about, Chris. Ain't no boat big enough to pull us, son. It's their fault, dog. It's not our fault that we're not good at stuff like that.
Get a stronger boat.
Get a better boat, son. You want me to come wakeboard with you? Get a stronger boat.
That's great. That's hilarious.
Shoot.
But yeah,
aliens are out there now, though, right? In the water. So I don't know, son.
Aliens in the water. Wait, yeah.
You missed. They said that there's aliens in the ocean, bro. Where you been?
In the ocean. Wait, there's aliens in the ocean
right behind you. Like you don't even know, son. Like they said
I
that.
had no idea. Where was this news story? Link me.
And
Someone.
it's all over the internet, bro.
It's all over the internet.
Yes.
Okay. I
And
mean,
look,
I'm not shocked. All right, look, I'm not surprised. I'm acting
did,
surprised.
did your show host producer person, did they confirm what I said right there? They know what's up.
Just saying that they're not surprised.
Oh, okay.
As that's what I'm saying. I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised that I missed the announcement. But I guess I shouldn't be.
Space is actually the ocean.
I could believe that. Have you ever been like up under the ocean? Like, have you ever been scuba diving or snorkeling or like anything like that? Dude, it's another planet.
I'm scared of the water. I don't even want to go on cruises.
I feel you on that. I have
I'm
zero,
for real.
absolutely zero desire to be on a cruise.
I don't like water that much. I got like a fear of it for some reason, I guess. I don't know what happened. Nothing happened
Okay.
to me that I know of. That's like a thing, but I just
They're like a specific.
yeah, like
It's
I'll do
just
stuff.
you
Like
have
I
an
do
aversion
like
to it.
yeah, I go on water. I've been on like rafting and like canoeing and kayak. Like I like stuff, jet skis and things like that too in a way. But I want to stay like on top of the water and be able to get out of it relatively easily. Get a
In a
shower.
relative, yeah.
Yeah, get cleaned up pretty quickly afterwards because it feels dirty usually
I feel that.
afterwards. But I like to go as long as we're doing stuff. I can be doing stuff, floating or I don't want to like again. Wakeboarding's gonna be hard.
You want to see like clear water too. Like you're like a clear water person.
I mean, it can be dirty ish, like
You
murky,
down
whatever
the
you
lake,
say. Like
the
it don't
muddy
have to be
lake?
super dirty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It don't have to be like that. But again, I'm not trying to get in it too much if I can't see
I got
or
you.
understand what's going on in it. We went
If I'm
down.
familiar with the water, I'll get in it if it's muddy like that. Like if I'm in a familiar area, but I definitely pay attention geographically to where I am, and it seems like them lizard boys are moving further and further and further up. So
Mm,
like I don't know. I mean, I've heard about them being even in Alabama these days. So like,
mm,
they
yeah,
got
and so
crocodiles here.
down there,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
didn't know that.
Didn't know that either.
I guess that makes sense though, because y'all are landlocked
Far enough into
with
the
other
Caribbean to
places
where
and
like
other
they've
places
made.
that do have it. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're landlocked
yeah,
around other
yeah,
places
yeah,
that have it.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
huh, huh. That's yeah. No, thank you. Like we see the crocodile again,
Stay away from the banks.
bro. Yeah, like we see the ones down in again Costa Rica going
In
down
Costa
like
Rica,
right
yeah.
before. Yeah, it's just like no, thank you, sir. That's terrifying. Terrifying. Um,
Yeah.
well, that's giving me the heebie-jeebies right now.
I was watching it just set in where you just remember where the guy was like, "Hey, look over to." I remember that bus ride when we were like riding out to the hotel the first time I went with you to Costa Rica. Like I looked out the window and they were like, "Hey, I look out the window." You're just they're literally like laying on top of each other, and you're like, "Oh man,
They look big from
crikey!"
that bridge, right? And so
Yeah,
just imagine you slide on down there. No, I'm good. I'm all right.
we
That's
good.
yeah. So
Closing thoughts. You got UFC doing their little dealio tomorrow.
go Ryan
Anything
Aiken.
you're excited about there? Is Ryan Aiken's on that somewhere, but I
Yeah,
didn't see a
against
bracket anywhere.
Gabriel Almeida is what I saw. I saw like two things: is like Musumeci versus Felipe Machado and Ryan
That'll be
versus
exciting.
Almeida. And we literally tried to look on a bunch of different stuff right before we started recording to try to get more information about it, but it was hard to get a quick pop of information about it without spending too much time. So yeah, last thoughts is we got to get better at like getting information out, I guess, to people even at the highest levels
Yeah.
of stuff. And I don't know what the right way is, but at least like post a graphic with
Anyway.
the upcoming matches and things like that to look out for, like you would for a UFC fight card. Put the same
Right.
kind of love and
Same
attention.
graphics,
Yeah,
same like just
just
names.
love us too. We just want to be loved like everybody else, and
We
then I'm
just
like,
we just want to be paid attention to.
that's it. Everybody just wants to be told they're good enough and be compensated for that. Um,
Not
that's it.
bad.
What about you? What's your last thought?
My last thought is to master the little things and like really master them. Like, that's my takeaway from my morning and my day is that like the little things are the most important part. Because it's like that
I,
one little thing of like take your hands and quit grabbing like this and do this. It was like, oh man, I didn't flip over once after that. That helps so much, and I don't even know how to surf yet. And that was I feel light years ahead.
that was another technique. You got you.
Yeah,
So
exactly. That's exactly what it feels like. So
beautiful.
till next week, it'll be 10 a.m. somewhere. I guess I was trying to do for a
Facts.
closing.
That's facts.
We're out.